So as it was in April of 1862, we've come on a day of rather inclement weather to Shiloh, Tennessee. Now, as we're discussing how the war was won in the West, the vital key to the Western theater is the rivers, and we're here on the bank of the Tennessee River. Everything about speed and volume of movement is the river traffic in the West, and that's peacetime or wartime. And as the Union Army slowly progresses further and further into the Confederacy along these rivers, we have this meeting engagement at Shiloh, Tennessee. Now, you didn't intend to move on in this direction down the Tennessee. You had another plan on the Cumberland, yes?
On the Cumberland, it was necessary. Here, we're using the river as that avenue to move the Army at great volume and with speed, better than roads here, and no railroads that offer us the same opportunity. Ideally, though, we are heading from here. The purpose was use the river as much as we can and then get inland, because we have to go to a rail junction that's just as important as any of these river landings from
So there's two forts, Henry and Donelson. We were just there.
The Cumberland.
And Henry is on the Tennessee,
on that
while
side.
Donelson is on the Cumberland. And you wanted to move down the Cumberland towards...
My intention was to clear the Cumberland first,
Yeah.
all the way through up to Nashville.
Towards Nashville.
So you look
okay.
at Fort Henry is on the point of the confluence of the Cumberland and the Tennessee, so that is eliminated, so that no longer is an issue. So coming further up the Cumberland is that next fort that allows us, or rather would block us from access to Nashville, so that has to be removed. So that's done. And I want to move on Nashville strategically, but I'm outranked by Halleck, who has other designs.
Our good friend Halleck. So Halleck orders movement down the Tennessee towards the railroad junction at Corinth, Mississippi.
Correct, yes.
And explain why Sherman is down here and we have this meeting engagement at Shiloh.
Sherman's division is here, because I've reinforced too that we've not implemented the core command system here. So we're operating with direct command to division commanders. Sherman is added to our forces. He had been acting independent because he's not with us at Donelson. But now that he's with us here and he's my most trusted subordinate, I have him at the vanguard leading as a probing action with his division. And this is where we're landing. So Sherman's division is here first to establish a safe zone to begin then bringing more of our troops downriver to here so that we can move from here en masse further on. And Sherman is of a mind that the rebels know our intention to move on Corinth. We're all maybe thinking that they're thinking as we are, that that's the goal. And we really can't say where they are for sure. But we know our goal is to move through here and get to that fortified location that we believe they're going to defend, because we would consider that the appropriate place to defend.
And so Sherman is pretty certain they're there.
In all of his understanding of the intelligence gathered, he's confident. In fact, he reassures me here on April 5th that the Rebs aren't moving anywhere near us. They're a good 20 miles south of Corinth. So you can go back to your headquarters up in Savannah and see to moving the rest of the Army.
Now, meanwhile, Albert Sidney Johnston has other plans.
And
Johnston is such an interesting figure to discuss because he's sort of a celebrity general. He's a prior service in the U.S. Army and even the senior brigadier general in the Texian Army. So he's
colorful.
He is a colorful figure.
Colorful and romanticized by the Southern soldiers, who have a tendency to do that with their commanders. But I think that has a bonding and a cohesion in their army that ours doesn't enjoy because of the mythos they create.
So rather than taking the defensive posture, Johnston moves his army against Sherman's division, which was camped up on these bluffs here on this bank of the river.
Just up over the ridgeline, and
there are no federal troops on this bank of the river.
Correct. There's only Sherman's division that's here at the time, and we're developing the landing.
And so since we haven't mentioned before, we're here at Pittsburg Landing, which is the site of all the river traffic. They were able to pull up about 5 boats could fit on this landing site.
Right. It's a crude landing site. It's not like Savannah where it's all developed. So after saying how important this landing is to the entire operation, one division comes, a second division comes. Everything develops on the date of April 6th, the first day of the fighting, where we're caught unawares, and Sherman will concede that late in the evening of April 6th. But the fighting generates this huge, incredible fury that it builds throughout the day. It's a rolling fight that we're funneling men in. The rebels have a full force on top of what's going on. That our army's nearly broken. They hold in the center of the line, which becomes known as the Hornet's Nest because of that intensity. Our army is pushed back to these bluffs where the men are clinging to the bluffs, waiting for transport away that I'm not prepared for. McPherson had come to me and said, are we considering the evacuation plan? And I said, I'm not considering any kind of evacuation, let alone losing here. So we're not in that, as far as my vision, we're not conceding anything because I know I've got a second army coming. Buell has one of his divisions across under Bull Nelson, that the rest of his army will be coming. It's a matter of us holding and getting that extra force as the momentum, and that's what occurs on the second day, that we roll them back. Significant though, you talk of this mysterious Albert Sidney Johnston, and I'm not discounting him at all, but in the fight where they capture the center of our lines division under General Prentice, that capture slows them down, that now they have to reorganize, and the organization changes because we don't learn till a few days later that Johnston was killed during that part of the fight. So their army commander's dead, their army's somewhat demoralized, and it stops their momentum. And I understand how important momentum is, that we want to take advantage. So in that 2-hour lull before they try again the fight, we're able to reinforce the lines and strengthen things. But now the day is over. We're coming close to darkness where nobody will fight. And that's where you can almost take a breath to think, all right, we made it, we held. The second day we'll have 40,000 fresh troops to come on, and the fight ends with that. It's not a captured army fight. This is a fight where the Confederate army breaks off after the fight and moves away, but they lose. So this isn't a capture of an army. But it's significant that now we have a foothold here that will enable us to punch down to the ultimate supply goal of Corinth, moving then on towards the Mississippi River, which is the big river of all these other rivers that are these significant transport networks.
So no big capture, no strategic victory.
No.
Why does Shiloh matter to victory in the West?
Shiloh matters, first of all, in the minds of the people at home because of the loss of life. I wrote to Julia, in fact, that on that portion of the field, the Hornet's Nest, you could walk across bodies without touching the ground over a mile. The significance of that is the loss of life is incredible, that we lose 22,000 casualties here, that no one can conceive of how terrible that would be. And you begin looking at why. Well, the Army's not coordinated. 6 divisions by themselves under an Army commander is an awkward setup that we have to really, really consider now, adapting this corps system that the Eastern Army has gone to and embraced. So command and control, coordination, that's going to allow these corps commanders to administer 3 divisions separately from the commander of the overall army, where I'm more able to focus on the strategy, enjoying that luxury of trained commanders who I can delegate to and trust that these things will be handled on that level.
So just like some of the Napoleonic armies having to learn from the French that corps system,
yes.
Finally out in the West the Union is going to be adopting
a
separate corps.
Yes, and I said about that learning at Donelson, that I was keen to learn from those things quickly, and that's how we're able to improve. If you see the problem but you don't adapt to the problem, it's just going to continue.
And what are some other things that a corps commander is going to focus on that doesn't happen when a single army commander is ordering each division separately?
On a tactical view, delegation of the commands. Here's my intention with it. Corps commander, you do with that as you know best on the tactical level. On the other side of that are the supply concerns. I no longer have to worry intently about each division's needs, where now it's up to the corps commander to tend to the needs of ammunition and food and the medical needs and replacements, as well as getting the wounded away from the field.
So corps will usually move independently,
yes.
Have separate logistics, separate medical, separate other concerns.
Well, I can look at that. If I were to lay a map and I were to mark where my corps are, that I have that sort of luxury to know that the corps itself can spread as the corps commander sees fit to the overall design of the operation we're in. Yeah.
So any other insights as to why Shiloh is key to victory out here in the West?
It's a stepping stone.
It's
the stepping stone where we learn, if we're going to be successful from this point, we have to change how we're going to be organized to fight, because the Confederate resistance is even stronger here than it was before, at a much more intense level, and the old command structure will not handle that more intense level of resistance.
So Shiloh's a learning experience. And speaking of learning experiences, our next stop is about 30 minutes by carriage, but based on directions from Halleck, it should take about 30 days.
Sadly, yes. If I could just touch on that too, because I'm relieved of command after this fight. And I'm frustrated by Halleck now taking a hands-on approach to everything, that I'm considering just leaving the Army entirely. Sherman talked me out of it. Sherman says to me, when he comes to me, that he thinks if I linger, I could be restored by some happy accident and we could carry on, because otherwise I'll just go home and the war forgets us. As Halleck takes our army from here 20-30 miles south, instead of just moving the army, it's a day's march. Every 3 miles he moves the entire army, all 6 divisions, and has them dig in. So they're spending twice the amount of daylight fortifying from a 3-mile march, 3 times the march time they're spending digging in. And Lincoln is frustrated because he expected us to be in Corinth a day after the fight here, and he finds that it's over a month for Halleck, that he says, well, I want Grant back in command, and he takes Halleck and moves him to Washington. So that's another significant thing here, is that we learn it's not just on my level down, but it's the people in between me and the War Department that are getting in the way of the system, that it has to be streamlined with people who understand the needs of that.
All right. Well, now we'll begin the slow crawl to Corinth, to figuring out how the war was won in the West.